Majority Report with Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Thursday, September 30th, 2021. My name is Emma Vigeland, in for Sam Seder, and this is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Rafia Zakaria, author of Against White Feminism, Notes on Disruption. Meanwhile, today is Infrastructure Day. At least that's what Nancy Pelosi is saying when she assures that the plan is still to hold the vote on the small bipartisan infrastructure package today, despite progressives showing no signs of moving on the dual-track process that includes the reconciliation bill, as promised. The Biden administration has also begun tamping down expectations for that vote. More on that later. Schumer says the Senate has reached a deal to avert a government shutdown, at least until December 3rd, with a resolution that does not include a debt limit increase. McConnell is still refusing to budge there, but a few Republican senators are still trying to tack on some amendments to the final legislation, including anti-Afghan refugee provisions and banning federal money for vaccine mandates. Lovely. A group of activists staged a protest outside of Biden Chief of Staff's Ron Klain's home yesterday, bringing a mountain of fake bones with them, outraged over Biden's inaction on global vaccine inequity. This comes as 70% of African countries have been unable to meet the WHO's target of inoculating 10% of their populations. The CDC is urging pregnant women to get vaccinated, reporting that less than a third of pregnant women have been vaccinated. Contracting COVID while pregnant increases the probability of stillbirth and other complications, including hospitalization. And lastly, despite years of hard-fought protests from water protectors, the Enbridge crude oil pipeline that runs across Minnesota has been completed, and the company announced oil will start flowing shortly. However, protesters vow to continue the fight. All this and more on today's program. Welcome to the show, ladies and gentlemen. Sam is out today, as he is most Thursdays at this point, unless I am out. And so we have a great show for you today. Looking forward to speaking with Rafia about Against White Feminism, which is a topic that in particular, I think is important to discuss, delineating some of the corporate pro-capitalist feminist messages from a much more inclusive and broader feminist critique. But before that, this is a big day in the news. We have right now an infrastructure fight that is about to hit a boiling point. Today is supposed to be the vote for the bipartisan infrastructure bill. Now, the Biden administration seems to be tamping down expectations for that infrastructure vote today on the bipartisan bill. Energy Secretary Jennifer Granholm was on CNN's John Berman's show this morning, and she basically said the obvious. It's really okay if the House can't meet the conservative Democrats' arbitrary deadline for a vote on the bipartisan infrastructure package today. She's a curious voice for the Biden administration to deploy in this area, but the fact that she's doing so seems to indicate that hopes are dwindling for the bipartisan bill to be voted on today, which is a good thing. That means that the progressives are holding the line, at least with the information that we have right now. Here is Jennifer Granholm.
1 second.
It is not some major cataclysm. If there isn't a vote today, there is full support of the president's full Build Back Better agenda. There is some negotiation around the margins about the size of the package, the second package, and what's in it and how that's shaped. But this will get through. I will mark my words. The infrastructure bill will be passed, and a version of the reconciliation bill will be as well.
A version of the reconciliation bill. You will hear right now in the media a lot of Democrats saying a reconciliation package. I believe Nancy Pelosi was quoted this morning essentially saying that a reconciliation package will be agreed upon. I'm trying to find it here, but I don't necessarily have the quote in front of me. Oh, here we go. Nancy Pelosi says, "I told members of my leadership that the reconciliation bill was a culmination of my service in Congress. Remove all doubt in anyone's mind that we will not have reconciliation. We will have a reconciliation bill. That's for sure." So you're hearing a lot about this, that a reconciliation bill will be coming down the pike. But the issue with that is that if she still is saying that a vote is going to happen today on the bipartisan infrastructure package, then what is in a reconciliation bill? Well, that is very, very fluid, and that language is important.
It's a failure of leadership that it's a reconciliation bill and not the reconciliation bill, or even better yet, Joe Biden's reconciliation bill. That's a failure of leadership. And to the extent that this gets hacked down by Manchin Cinema, it's because Joe Biden didn't want to take ownership of it.
Well, yes. I had someone ask me yesterday who doesn't work in this field, you know, if there was one senator like Cinema holding up the entire Trump agenda, do you think that Donald Trump would be screaming and berating them and making them feel the pain for holding up his entire agenda? Biden's not doing any of that. Part of that is because he is a believer in these arcane senatorial processes, and he's committed to them in an almost religious fashion. And part of it, too, is that's just like not his leadership style, and it's weak leadership, in my opinion, and as Matt pointed out. And so the issue here, too, is that Pelosi and other members of leadership, Chuck Schumer, there seems to be a bit of a schism between the two on an approach, but Pelosi is trying to thread this needle where she says, okay, well, maybe if we get a pinky promise and we get a public declaration from Manchin and Sinema that even if we do push the bipartisan bill through and we get the progressives on board and we're able to vote yes on this, that we will get a reconciliation bill later. Maybe that will be enough for progressives. It damn well shouldn't be enough for progressives. A pinky promise from Manchin and Sinema. Why would progressives ever trust Manchin and Sinema on reconciliation? You're hearing this language about a firm public commitment from Manchin and Sinema. That's worth less than the paper it's written on, or in, for that matter, because Manchin loves taking out op-eds in the Washington Post and the New York Times to make public declarations that he had immediately backed off of because he uses them as leverage.
Yeah, I promise to you that if you get rid of your leverage and give it all to me, I won't do anything bad with it.
Right. I mean, firm public commitments, like Manchin loves anything that's public because it gets him more attention for his branding exercise. And like Sinema, a public commitment from Sinema, she's like Harley Quinn back there. She's just going to laugh at the chaos as the flames engulf her. I mean, this is just the kind of person that she is. They should not be trusted 100%. And Pelosi is in a difficult position in trying to wrangle all of these members of her caucus. But she does have to step forward and basically say, this was the agreement from the beginning, that these two bills were going to be tied together. Even though the moderate conservative Democrats agreed that they were going to do this dual track process, we really understand now, and a lot of us understood at the beginning, that was a lie for them to keep progressives out of the negotiation process on the bipartisan infrastructure bill and strike it and pass it with Republicans, which is why McConnell voted for it in the Senate. The guy doesn't do anything that isn't strategic. He did it because he knew this had a good chance of throwing a wrench in the Biden agenda, which is why he chose to do so. They wanted to keep progressives out of the negotiation process, create an infrastructure package that they would eventually use as a way to kill the second larger bill. And they're attempting to be successful in that. And then the media frames it as the progressives being the ones who are derailing it. No. This was always the agreement. It doesn't matter that the moderates, the conservative Democrats' agreement was in bad faith. Oh, progressives should have known that, I guess? No, this was always how it was supposed to go down. And I really appreciate specifically Jayapal and Ro Khanna, of who I've seen. I know Ocasio-Cortez has been vocal about this, but I haven't seen her made this point specifically. Reframe this as we are doing what the Biden administration wants, because that is a kind of talking point that appeals to mainstream normie Democrats in a way, and also the media, to keep them off their backs a little bit, because they're chomping at the bit to blame this on progressives. And if you consistently go on cable news and you say the truth, which is that we are the ones on the side of the Biden agenda, then you've got a chance of staving off the wolves.
Yeah, I mean, it's also like, don't take ownership of this half measure, frankly. Even the 3.5 trillion, and we'll see, maybe we get into Manchin's demands later, but which is a lot less than 3.5. But Bernie has been the best at saying, actually, we've compromised like basically to half of what we wanted, but even more than that. So we're done compromising. Yes.
Bradley, it's hard to read all this, but it seems that because we're sending each other details back and forth, because this is such an evolving situation. But Manchin's proposal to Schumer has leaked. We will get back to you on that in a little bit and look into some of the numbers there later in the program when we have some time to look it over. But for now, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we will be joined by Rafia Zakaria, author of Against White Feminism, Notes on Disruption. But for now, we will turn to one Sam Seder for advertisements. Here you go, Sam.
Thank you, Emma. Hey, today's sponsor is BetterHelp Online Counseling. They're giving our audience 10% off their first month when you go to BetterHelp.com/Majority Report. BetterHelp gives you access to your own fully licensed and accredited therapist via phone, chat, or video. Now, sure you're aware, if you've attempted to go see a therapist, therapists elsewhere have long wait lists. Sometimes it can take you weeks. Sometimes it can take you months before they can see you. But when you sign up with BetterHelp, they match you with a therapist based on your specific needs, and you'll be communicating with them in less than 24 hours. A lot of people found telemedicine to be very helpful, particularly therapy during COVID. And I suspect there's a lot of folks who are just going to stick with that. I found it much more convenient. Obviously, a lot of stress coming out of a pandemic, a lot of stress during a pandemic, a lot of stress when there's not a pandemic. Therapy has been extremely helpful for me. It's always helpful to speak to someone. And once BetterHelp connects you with a therapist, if you find that it's not a good fit, you can switch to a new one at any time for any reason with no additional charge. They have thousands of licensed therapists from all over the country, so they have therapists with specialties that may not even be available in your area. BetterHelp also tends to be more affordable than therapists that you'd find through traditional means. You don't have to have insurance to use BetterHelp, and they have financial aid options for those who qualify. BetterHelp is giving everyone in our audience 10% off your first month when you go to BetterHelp.com/Majority Report. That's BetterHelp, H-E-L-P, BetterHelp.com/Majority Report. You can find the URL in the description of this video or podcast and check it out. Thank you to Aura for sponsoring today's episode. Aura is giving my audience 40% off when you go to Aura.com aura.com/majority. That's aura.com/majority. Look, think about all your online accounts. You got finances, you got devices. What are you doing to protect them? Because if you're like most people, like me, you're probably reusing your password all over the place. Actually, I try not to do that, but I do that too much. And a data breach to any one of those services could create a lot of problems for you. Every 10 seconds, someone becomes a victim of fraud or identity theft, and a lot of these people never recover their stolen money. All right, so let's talk about how Aura can protect you. Aura is a new type of security service. It protects your online data. It protects your devices with one simple subscription. You get alerted to fraud, you get alerted to threats, and you get alerted fast. If your online accounts or passwords were leaked online, if someone tries to open a bank account in your name, you get alerted quick. It's got an easy online dashboard. Alerts are sent straight to your phone. Aura keeps you in control and guides you through solving any issues. All plans come with a $1 million identity theft insurance to help recover your stolen funds and experienced U.S.-based customer support that has got your back. So if you want to secure your online presence and you want to do so from hackers and from scammers, check out Aura. You're going to get 40% off all plans when you go to Aura, aura.com/majority. The link is in the YouTube and the podcast description. Now, back to Emma.
We are back, and we are joined by Rafia Zakaria, author of Against White Feminism, Notes on Disruption. Rafia, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. Yes.
I'm looking forward to our conversation because, you know, I like to rail against white feminism. And sometimes when I speak about it, I think people have a hard time defining the concept. And your book does a really good job of defining that concept, which, again, people can misappropriate or misunderstand. So we can just start really at the beginning, how to define white feminism. How do we define white feminism?
Thank you so much, Emma. Yeah, you know, that is part of the central project of the book, is to not only define white feminism, but also create a vocabulary that allows people to point it out, right? So in this book, in Against White Feminism, I'm not using white feminism as a racially descriptive category. So it's not just a white woman who happens to be a feminist. The category that I'm talking about treats whiteness as an ideology, such that, you know, a brown feminist, for instance, could be a white feminist, in that it focuses on the proclivity of certain women who refuse to acknowledge the role white racial privilege has played within the feminist movement, and who are committed to maintaining this lie that ideas, policies, priorities, agendas set up by white women, selected by white women, should be the priorities, agendas, policies that apply to all women. So, you know, it's kind of a wake-up call in the sense that, that points out really the fact that the majority of the world's women are Black, brown, and Asian, and they don't see their priorities and their interests really reflected in feminism today. So if we are going to make feminism a politically vital movement, there really is no way to do that unless we become critical of how whiteness has privileged, the white woman as the feminist, right? Or the type of woman that everybody else should emulate if they want to be a feminist.
Right. I mean, there are other gradations of this broader definition that you talk about here, right? I'll often derisively talk about the book Lean In, for example. And in your book, you talk about trickle-down feminism and the concept of that as well. Like, a lot of this just stems back to feminism within capitalism as well. I guess if we're starting at the top of the flow chart with white feminism there, and I mentioned a few broader concepts, can we just flesh out, and if you don't mind doing this for us, fleshing out what that looks like, especially in 21st century America and under capitalism?
Yes. So not all, there is a history of anti-capitalism within white feminism, right? But what I talk about in the book is how capitalism essentially, selects a feminism that is most friendly to its precepts. And so the model of feminism that lives out post the 60s and 70s is precisely what you said. The girl boss, lean in feminism, where the idea of success is this very sort of ruthlessly individualistic success, where the idea is that, I have to mow as many people down as possible in my race to the top. And that's an entirely legitimate idea of feminism and success. So obviously I'm suggesting a very different model, which is, the charge to, for instance, for all women, regardless of race, to consider investing in collective successes, right? In the idea of sisterhood, not as a sort of rejection of your personal ambition, but sisterhood as a politically vital and grounding force that gives to all women. I think that right now, at this moment, we are in a moment which I would say of the transformation of our racial, differences in power. Everything is changing, from the workplace to how we work to how we socialize. And I think that there's a tremendous opportunity right now for us to change feminism, for us to make it, for us to resuscitate it. And I say that in particular because I've been shocked at the reactions of some kind of older white feminists who essentially do not understand that feminism in its current state, like we have it today, is essentially, it's a completely uninteresting, irrelevant category for the majority of the world's women.
Yeah. So have you noticed this conversation being different in US circles versus, say, like in Europe, where there is a lot of whiteness as well, but maybe the individualist capitalist culture isn't as I guess dominant as it is in the United States?
I've seen a huge difference in the reaction to the book in the US versus the UK, but it's not been along the lines that you suggest. I think the difference, and it has, once again made me realize just how lucky I am to have the precedent of Black women, civil rights leaders, women like, Audre Lorde, and then more recently, women like Mickey Kendall, Kimberly Crenshaw, who have laid a foundation for feminist critiques of race. And, that's just not the case in the UK. So, and of course, the UK is historically more implicated in colonialism and empire. But I've been shocked to see that it's still acceptable in the UK to say that women of color shouldn't be allowed to critique white feminism, for instance, just like that blanket kind of thing, where every attempt at conversation is interpreted as an attack or going for the jugular, or, these kinds of very, these statements that definitely demonize feminism that comes from a different racial background. So yeah, I mean, I would have, my expectations were actually exactly like yours. I thought that those cultures tend to be less individualistic, less sort of adhered to this kind of ruthless capitalism that we've long, had over here in the U.S. But instead, I found like a virulence, and it's almost like the discussion was it would have been in Jim Crow era United States, where the civil rights movement just hadn't happened yet. So that's been both puzzling but also interesting in terms of where even white and Western cultures are in terms of their conversations about race.
Yeah, well, so a little refreshing since we're on this program. We're off.
I know, right? I've been shocked. I really have been so shocked.
Yeah, you mentioned, and one of my favorite focuses of your book are just like the contours of colonialism in the way that some of white feminism manifests itself today. And again, like, we're using your term, I'm as white as it gets. I'm very consciously aware of that, but
you're not a white feminist.
Well, right. I'm attempting. So, I mean, like, how United States foreign policy furthers a lot of this is just such an important conversation, especially in the wake of how the media reacted to the Afghanistan withdrawal, for example, and the Taliban takeover there. And I mean, you touch on this a lot in your book. I guess I'll just want to give you an opportunity to react to that within the framework of a lot of your research. How a lot of, I think, white feminists basically talked about how outrageous it was for the United States' military presence to be gone in Afghanistan, because what would that do to feminism, right, in Afghanistan? And a lot of this is about white saviorism as well. So I'm wondering what your take was on this recent news.
Yes, as I say in the book, I call the war in Afghanistan as the United States' first, quote, feminist war. And the reason why I do that is because of the way in which the vocabulary, the language, the ideas, even to some extent, of feminism were co-opted by the larger war project, right? The Bush administration was looking to invade a country to have this very visible show of power, and in response to the 9/11 attacks, it couldn't attack Saudi Arabia, where most of the hijackers were from, because that would endanger the oil supply. So they settled on Afghanistan, and what they did is take an existing, campaign to end gender apartheid that was being run by a feminist majority at the time. And they essentially rolled that into their war campaign. And to the extent that leaders from the feminist majority were present to discuss this with White House and State Department officials, and were present when Colin Powell announced the invasion of Afghanistan. So I think, one of the reasons feminism has become irrelevant to so much of the world is because American feminism, at least, or white and Western feminism, perhaps at large, allied itself with this 20-year invasion and occupation of a country, mind you, whose indigenous women on the ground at the time were begging, just begging and imploring the United States to not invade their country. So, so essentially the value of Afghan women to the US has not been anything more than essentially political pawns, like against who or behind who they can hide their bombs, right? So it's all the school building and skateboarding and things like that are being shown to the public at home, to Americans, while, the dronings, the bombings, the night raids, the indefinite detention of hundreds of thousands of Afghans at Bagram, all of that is sort of, it's pushed behind this kind of visibly glitzy wrapping of women's rights. And the tragedy is that, you're absolutely right, is that, 20 years later, this August, it was like almost like getting punched in the face for me, because I would have thought that the US had learned something about Afghanistan and Afghan women, in those 20 years, but it absolutely hadn't. It was the same sort of reductionist stuff where it's like, ooh, I wear the burqa, I'm oppressed. Ooh, I take off the burqa, I'm no longer oppressed. This kind of political theater, to the extent that the congresswoman who did that literally did what I just described on the floor of the House, wore a burqa to the Met Gala. The anchors from wherever, Fox, CNN, etc., were roaming around the streets of Kabul. In fact, I had an Afghan woman tell me that these blonde white anchors who are making all this political theater of wearing a burqa on the streets of Kabul are making my life difficult, because they're setting this, there's no rule like telling me to wear the burqa right now, but these women are almost encouraging that contrast that, where, if the Taliban come in, they should impose the burqa, and they're making it a problem for me. But of course, there's no realization of that, right? And so in this sense, this book tries to show the damage that allying with an invasion and an occupation has done to the credibility of, Western feminism, and implores people to consider that the story of feminism should not be just centered around white and Western women. Other women, trust me, have won even more significant struggles than just getting the vote. Brown women in India have defeated colonialism at the same time, but nobody ever talks about them as feminist heroines. I think the book tries to create a conversation by really asking white women who continue to be in charge of, the discourse by and large, to consider why brown and Black, women have essentially signed off.
Right. And all of these are systems of power that are being challenged in their own specific way through feminism that isn't just like the dominant capitalist hegemonic white feminism. That's the only thing that's portrayed. And that in and of itself creates power systems. And that should be a project of deconstruction and one of intersectionality, which I'm surprised we've gotten this far into our conversation and not talked about that word. That I think is lost, especially when white feminism is so openly and almost proudly capitalist in the way it's manifested itself.
Right, because intersectionality centrally tries to diffuse power along a lot of interstices, along a lot of intersections, essentially, while capitalist white feminism wants to concentrate it usually within one race. And, and that is also the difference between what I'm calling trickle-down feminism. And essentially intersectionality wants a grassroots up feminism that begins with sort of transformations around communities and political, essentially, struggle and organizing, as opposed to the trickle-down feminism, which is like thought up by a number, like the 10 white women in New York City who are the professionalized feminist, mouthpieces.
The Time's Up board, right?
Yeah. I mean,
Time's
exactly.
Time's up. Yeah. Right. I guess you mentioned women's suffrage in the United States, and I did appreciate your focus on how the women's suffrage movement in the U.S. was not every white feminist who was involved, but many white feminists wanted to exclude Black women from the process, and non-white women, Indigenous women, of course, as well. Just historically, I guess we mentioned how neoliberal kind of capitalist white feminism came into prominence 60s and 70s. But before that, at the turn of the 20th century, what was some of what you found in your research for this book about that era and the birth of white feminism in that time?
Yeah, I mean, to give a snapshot to your readers, think of 1893 when the World's Fair was being held in Chicago, and the Columbian Exposition. And this was the first time women had not yet won suffrage, but the suffrage movement was in full force at the time. And it was the first time that in a World's Fair, women were given this huge building in which the idea was that they would showcase how the American woman was the modern, progressive, emerging leader, the best among women, by showcasing all their achievements. And I will tell you that, of course, the board to run this women's building was all white, made up of all white women, eventually headed by a rich socialite, like, a Melinda Gates type figure, but not divorced, actually still married to her rich husband. And, Black women just implored and wrote and asked and pleaded and demanded that their accomplishments also be included in this building that would have thousands and thousands of exhibits. And all that they gave Black women was one little glass case with a book about women African American women in upstate New York. That's all that they got. And the reason I present that snapshot is because, a few decades later, when suffrage was won, it was technically won. Like, Black women could technically vote. But what was actually happening in the South was basically that, mobs of unruly and angry people would try to accost any Black women that were trying to vote. Or city and county officials would demand IDs or whatever else at the time that would essentially not allow women to vote, Black women to vote. And so, the realities of how long it takes to actually be able to exercise a right is, I think, an integral part of the white feminist story. And it's, and one of the thoughts behind this book was that I wanted to connect those historical examples to what is happening in our contemporary, world. One very, very common thing, for instance, that white women do is, and this is an example of gaslighting, where, some woman of color will tell of an experience that she's had where she's faced racial harassment, or been dismissed or disregarded, and immediately they'll go, well, did that person say that it was your race that was, the reason that they did that? And, of course, in 2021, just like back then, nobody gives an announcement, oh, we're not going to let Black women vote, right? And it's the same right now, where we're not going to let brown women speak unless they support our agenda. Nobody provides me a note saying, hey, it's because of your skin color that I don't like you and that I think you are lesser than me and oppressed and require me to save you. But that is the paradigm that we have. And, unfortunately, white and Western feminism is very addicted to this paradigm of wanting to save women here and save women there, because it burnishes their own credentials as women who are very empowered and, the girl bosses of feminism.
Yeah, so I guess I would love if you could expand on the white savior element within white feminism, because like that kind of that trope has bothered me for as long as I can remember, honestly, and it's self-righteousness and the elevation of oneself while being ostensibly a savior. What did you find when writing about that, and if you could explain that concept to people?
Well, the first thing I'll say is, which all white women can and should do if they listen to this, it's that if you see your fellow white women posting pictures with Black children or with brown children or with poor women in India or Africa or wherever, please tell them to take those down. And the reason why I say that is this white savior industrial complex relies on using essentially brown and Black people as props to showcase, the moral goodness of the white savior who is there selflessly, altruistically, is just out there to provide help, et cetera, et cetera. What I deconstruct in the book is that the white savior or the white person doing that is not there just to help. They're there because they get a certain kind of emotional and mental high about having power over someone and then helping them, right? That's something that is very real. And that is something that, white society has relied on to essentially ensure that it is always considered morally superior to all those, horrible Black and brown people. And it's the same within feminism, right? I'm considered less of a feminist because my culture is shown as inherently feminist and backward and oppressive, right? And because of that, I can never be as good as a white feminist because they come from a culture that presents itself as inherently empowered, which is very, very far from the truth. And so 4 out of 5 women of color in the US, 1 out of 5 women of color in the US lives in poverty, right? So obviously there are, or if you take the UK, I looked at a statistic that said 144,000 women were raped in the UK, but there were only 1,400 prosecutions. That's not even a conviction. That's just a prosecution. Now, I could look at that statistic and say, wow, this shows a widespread cultural acceptance of rape in this society because hundreds of thousands of them are not even getting prosecuted. But that's never said. It's always considered a one-off, right? When a gender crime happens in the United States or UK or the rest of Europe. However, if a man kills his wife in Kabul, that's an honor killing, right? So it's not just femicide, has this added cultural component. And what I argue in the book is that there are no inherently feminist or unfeminist cultures, right? And unless we take this weird hierarchy away, where only white women are celebrated as heroines and Black and brown women are just there to tell their stories of trauma, unless we attend to that, we will never understand that women's empowerment and feminism, it should be and is in reality something that is found in all cultures, and that women all over the world are struggling to have and to and to use as a vehicle for magnifying their presence and their voices. So yes, I mean, I think that until we do that, until we stop using brown and Black women or children as props to showcase white goodness, this power dynamic is not going to cease.
Right, but on the other hand, we wear bikinis in this country, so I'm joking. I'm joking.
But it's a joke. But and I would laugh at it as a joke if it wasn't like the mainstream belief. Like, it's frustrating, I mean, that's what the vast majority of white women think. And American women think that if we have the power to do that, that amounts to some sort of empowerment. And, the book talks about that too. It talks about how, sexual liberation should be a part of women's empowerment, but it shouldn't be the sum total of women's empowerment, where you just prance about in your bikini, but 75%, more than that, women who are killed are being killed by their intimate partners. So, I mean, that is something that it's going to take a lot of us and a lot of voices to essentially, wrench this ridiculous idea that, just because you can perform a kind of sexual liberation by wearing a bikini or, by any other way, that equals being empowered, because it doesn't.
Well, I mean, I wanted to ask you a little bit before, we run out of time about, you mentioned just how you have been treated, and you touched on it a little bit, but you talk about your personal story in the book as well. And if you feel comfortable, I mean, I'd love if you could talk a little bit about, how you came to the U.S. and what you experienced in terms of the way people treated you, with a bit of that, maybe, I mean, you can speak to this, some of the dynamics that you referenced here, which you witnessed firsthand. Just tell that story if you feel comfortable.
Yeah, of course. I talk about the book. I talk in the book about the fact that I had an arranged marriage when I was 17. I came to the U.S. as a teenage bride. My husband at the time was born in an immigrant family, but was raised essentially in the U.S. And I went to college in the South. And I remember, for instance, like it must have just been the first week, right, where the Southern lady who's teaching English takes me aside, and outside the classroom after class, and she's like, "Are you okay? Are you all right? Like, do you need help? I can help you. I can be your help." And it took me years to understand that she thought of me as like this abused and person that was sort of in college, but who maybe needed help because she was facing. The issue with that is not that I'm not saying that immigrant women aren't subject to abuse. I worked in a domestic violence shelter where I, worked precisely with immigrant women facing domestic abuse. I'm just talking about, the assumption that I would not know anything about women's rights or empowerment or empowering myself simply because I had come from Pakistan as a teenager. So that sort of condescension it's rife. It's there all the time. Even now, even now after I've written books on feminism, and obviously I've told my story, how I left an abusive relationship, how, I became a single mom in law school, and then, got myself through the bar, and et cetera. Even after saying all of those things, my feminist credentials are called into question, are considered suspect, simply because I'm brown and Muslim, and I'm not willing to disavow those things. Which goes to the central problem, is that we might not explicitly be asking women to become white to be considered feminist, but we are asking women to become white to be included, at least in the feminist conversation, right? Because if you don't work to be relatable, if you don't pretend, if you want to, for instance, to be taken seriously as an intellectual feminist, right? You shouldn't talk about your personal experience, right? My personal experience living in a shelter, leaving an abusive marriage, et cetera, because within American feminist circles, at least, the people who make the decisions are not the people who have ever fought any kind of frontline battles in terms of their feminist credentials. So there is a gatekeeping of sorts, which keeps women who have actually fought these battles, who've been the single moms, who've faced, sexual abuse. There is a very intentional sort of siloing of those women as, they're brought on again to tell their stories of trauma, but they're not included, for instance, in the board of directors, right? Especially not if they're public about their trauma.
And before we run out of time, you just talked a little bit about how being a Muslim woman, you weren't able to be perceived as a real feminist. And it just strikes me how, to bring it back to the start of our interview, the concept of white feminism is an extension of capitalism, how capitalism chooses which religion defines empowerment, which skin color is an extension of or what's empowered, right? Which aka means having power in capitalist society. Gender, of course, as well, but like the white feminism as a part of that whole, I think is the number one takeaway.
Absolutely.
From your book, and of course it spills over into like religion and the portrayal of Islam as inherently wrong in that way.
And that hurts Muslim feminists so much, because their entire project is to try to make Islam egalitarian for women who are within the religion. So, so there are all these constant degradations that are happening. And, it's to take the feminist conversation forward, we absolutely have to recognize that having all these different, like Muslim feminism, Black feminism, et cetera, it doesn't make feminism weaker. It makes feminism stronger, because it means that you're bringing all of those people within a larger discussion, so that can be, the basis for a collective movement. I mean, one reason why Texas has happened, I mean, it exposes the fact that we don't have a collective, politically relevant feminist movement in this country that we can draw on immediately if you have an attack like that on reproductive rights. So, you know, the impetus is that if we can only start having this conversation about race within feminism, we will have overcome the biggest obstacle to, you know, a true sisterhood that exists today. You know, it is the biggest obstacle, and it's white feminists' insistence that solidarity means listening to them that I hold responsible for, you know, the condition feminism as a whole is in today.
Well, I really loved your book, and I'm passionate about this topic, and I appreciate the way you communicate it so unabashedly and correctly, in my view. Rafia Zakaria, author of Against White Feminism, Notes on Disruption. Thank you so much. There you go. There's the
book.
There's the cover. I like the book too. Or I like the cover as well. Thank you so much for your time today, Rafia. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. It's really been a pleasure.
All right, folks, we're going to take a quick break, come back and wrap things up. We are back, and in case you were unaware, last night, despite it being the day before this deadline for the conservative Democrats, the deadline that they set on the vote for the bipartisan infrastructure bill, which we've gone over at length, is a way to kill or significantly water down the progressive priority bill that includes an extension of the child tax credit, climate provisions, universal pre-K, free community college, etc. Many important ideas and concepts, or not just concepts, but actual legislation within that larger package. That they chose to still have this congressional baseball game last night, despite this, as I mentioned, being a very tough time in Washington. Tuffy works too. The Nancy Pelosi was caught on camera at this congressional baseball game, which they have every year. And the commentary may amuse me because Pelosi looks like she's furiously talking on the phone and is pretty pissed off. And yet that wasn't portrayed by the C-SPAN baseball announcers.
It was Roderick Davis at the top of the lineup.
Speaker, no doubt happy about that play, but she is known as a big sports fan, and often after dealing with a lot of really difficult reporter questions related to what's going on in
a big sports fan. She looks like it. I mean, she is on the phone furiously talking probably to her husband back home in San Francisco. Damn it. Look, that should have been called a strike, and it was called a ball. Unreal. That's definitely what she was talking about there. It's super tone deaf to have this congressional baseball game. Not that anyone really cares. Republicans versus Democrats at the height of these negotiations. But I mean, that's kind of how things go down in DC anyway, for the most part. So it's all theater to them anyway. Why not play a game?
If they pass the 3.5 trill, it looks a lot better.
Yeah, it does. It does. If that congressional baseball game was used to finally get these conservative Democrats to get with the program and get with the Biden agenda, which is the correct framing, then maybe it was a success, but we'll see. All right, folks, this is all the time that we have for today for our Peacock audience. We will see you tomorrow.
You know, the way Rafia was talking about how it's bad to assume non-Christian women disempowered, it really is the way that, like, the new atheist type anti-Muslim Islamophobic crew, they basically just naturalized the misogyny in those communities and say, like, actually no, this is how they have to be. Not only are they this way now and disregard all of history, say, like, for instance, in Iran and them trying to nationalize their oil or whatever, forget all that. This is what their holy book has to say. Mm-hmm. And you really with enemies of sort of misogynist Islam like that, I mean, who needs friends?
Right. I just wanted to read this because it was a criticism that I think is good. Hey, Emma, I didn't hear much about trans inclusion and feminism in your interview. Maybe I missed it. That I wrote down a question about that and I did not get to it. I'm really sorry because I did want to get to it. So that is my bad. But and then I will also say, Bourbon Socialist, love the interview today, Emma. I definitely think Michael Brooks would have loved the emphasis on international feminist issues and solidarity among feminists. I look forward to Majority Report Thursdays because of the great work you do in the free half and the laughs with Matt and Brandon, the fun half. Keep up the great work, Thursday crew. Thank you very much.
I may be misremembering this, but I'm pretty sure Michael interviewed Rafia.
Oh, she did? He did?
Yep, I think so. I'm gonna add Binder and Brandon, by the way.
Okay, yeah, let's add them. And Maumua Cinema says it's a historical map, the way that it's portrayed after, talking about what you said about
well, that's
Iran.
what I'm saying. Yeah, disregard any sort of political history or, yeah.
Yes. I've been using your line about, there's somebody in my life who, like, keeps wanting to make, like, talk about just theoretically, philosophically, and I've been using your why use philosophy when you can use history a little bit.
Philosophy is for people too lazy to do history and want all the lessons up front.
I was trying to be polite, but I wanted to go a little bit harder. Hey, Brandon, what's up? You're muted. And maybe you can't hear me.
I think this might be having some issues.
You're having some issues?
Oh no, I just couldn't click the button properly. That was the only issue. But I could hear you, but I was muted.
Singular issue, right?
Yeah.
How you guys doing?
I'm doing all right. How are you doing? And I caught a little bit of the end of your anecdote there. I'm not sure what the beginning was.
Yeah, I was using Matt's sage advice in real life conversations about philosophy and history, but we just had a really great interview about Against White Feminism. Some very, very brilliant chatters pointed out that I am, in fact, white. That is accurate. How you guys doing?
Hello, everybody. I'm doing good, Emma. I didn't get a chance to listen to that interview. I was following the congressional hearing with Facebook right now, where they're being grilled over basically their own research that was leaked that found that apparently Facebook and Instagram might not be good for children's mental health.
Whoa.
Breaking news. Yeah, but it is actually a really interesting hearing. What's his name? Senator Ed Markey reintroduced the Kids Act, which basically is his legislation that would deal with some of these problems on a federal level. For example, your favorite, your kids' favorite shows on YouTube or Facebook or whatever, they wouldn't be able to do influencer marketing to them. Like, you don't put on Sesame Street on PBS and see Big Bird, cracking open something like
Four Loko.
No, but cracking open like a kid's toy and like playing with it and telling them, oh yeah, get it it's a Kmart exclusive, like you do with Ryan's toy review on YouTube, for example. So it was always very weird because it's actually illegal for children to be marketed to on TV in program like that. And that's not illegal apparently on shows that are broadcast online.
Well, that's good for free speech, right?
Of course.
There was actually a reality show in the early 2000s called Kid Nation, where the entire plot was dropping 100 kids in like a ghost town in Arizona and letting them form like a little Lord of the Flies environment. It's aired on Fox News. And, you can still find episodes of it online places. I can't tell you where, but, it really is just like a libertarian dream there.
That honestly sounds incredible. And you know what, in the fun half, speaking of things you can find online, Matt, we are looking forward to a bit of a recap / teaser of your debate with the one Michael Tracy.
Oh yeah, this thanks to this show, I debated Michael Tracy last Friday.
So that's a really smooth transition to plug Doomed, and then when we get into the fun half, we can talk a little bit more about the Tracy saga.
For sure. So youtube.com/Matt Binder for the live stream version of the show, doomedcast.com for the audio version of the show. There was a great interview last week I did with the author of a new book on Peter Thiel, which you should definitely go check out. And there will be a new live show on the live stream at YouTube tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern time. But what everyone wants to know about is the Michael Tracy debate, which you can see on my channel, youtube.com/Matt Binder. It's the last thing uploaded. It went up Friday. It was live on his stream. Interestingly, it disappeared and he had to re-upload it. He said tech issues. I'll believe him because it looks like it's fully there. Although you did lose his audience's live chat comments, unfortunately, and they were very.
That's what I'm really interested in, actually. But anyway,
yeah.
I guess we have to go to Rockfin for a few bucks to see the comments there.
Yeah, they were very interesting. Very interesting. I know. I don't judge people by who follows them, but there's definitely if everyone who follows you is the same type of person, then I think then you have to look within and see what are you doing to attract those types of people.
Yeah. It's my job to judge people by who follows them. So.
And Matt, Left Reckoning, what's happening over there?
Last night, Adrian Martinez and Sam Goodman of La Ruta del Clima of Costa Rica, climate NGO, talked about what we need to be focusing on ahead of COP26 in terms of not letting the big polluters get away with forgetting about, like, let's say they wipe out an entire island because of climate. You can't mitigate that, right? Like, we're going to need to start coughing up some cash. And it's we talk about the dynamic of how these major polluters basically destroy the whole planet, and then to address the issue, we extend financing to everybody else. So we collect out the interest on that, and why that's a little bit messed up. So that was last night, patreon.com/Left Reckoning, where we went into not only Sam Harris, but other rationalist podcasters turning on the Weinsteins over this ivermectin stuff. So patreon.com/Left Reckoning, we went deep on that, folks.
And Brandon, what's happening over on the discourse?
We should have a new episode out for patrons this weekend regarding the Havana Syndrome craze, the new dance craze that's sweeping the nation's federal agents, and the vaccine mandate. and all sorts of good things. So, stay tuned.
Whoa, stay tuned. All right, guys. We are about to head into the fun half. Just Trade Coffee, fair trade. Shit.
Just Coffee, fair trade, coffee.
I haven't memorized that part of Sam's pitch yet, but Just Coffee Co-op fair trade coffee, tea, and chocolate.
Sounds like you haven't had your Just Coffee yet.
I haven't. I actually ran out of my Just Coffee, and I need to order some more. That's why I'm drinking cold brew from the evil plastic cup. I couldn't bring it from home. 646-257-3920. See you in the fun half.
Left is best. Jamie and I may have a disagreement.
Yeah, you can't just say whatever you want about people just because you're rich.
I have an absolute right to mock them on YouTube.
He's up there buggy whipping like he's the boss.
I am not your employer.
I'm tired of the negativity.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to upset you. You're nervous? You're a little bit upset? You're riled up?
Yeah, maybe you should rethink your defense of that, you fucking idiots.
We're just going to get rid of you.
All right.
But dude. You want to smoke this joint?
Yes.
Do you feel like you are a dinosaur?
Some good shit.
Exactly. I'm happy now.
It's a win-win.
It's a win-win-win.
Oh, hell yeah.
Now listen to me. 2, 3, 4, 5 times. 847-906-501-457. 2, 38, 56, 27. 1 half. 5 eighths. 3.9 billion.
Wow.
He's the ultimate math nerd.
Don't you see?
Why don't you get a real job instead of spewing vitriol and hatred, you left-wing Limbaugh?
Everybody's taking their dumb juice today.
Come on, Sammy.
Dance, dance, dance.
Ooh.
I had my first post-coital scene with a woman. I'm hoping to add more moves to my repertoire. All I have is the dip and the swirl.
Fine, we can double dip.
Yes, this is a perfect moment.
No.
Wait, what?
You make under $1 million a year. You're scum. You're nothing.
Excuse me? Fuck you, you fucking liberal elite. I think you belong in jail.
Thank you for saying that, Sam. You're a horrible, despicable person.
All right, gonna take a quick break. I want to take a moment to talk to some of the libertarians out there. Take whatever vehicle you want to drive to the library. What you're talking about is jibber jabber.
Classic. I'm feeling more chill already.
Good. Donald Trump can kiss all of our asses.
Hey, Sam. Hey, Andy. You guys ready to do some evil?
Hitler was such an idiot.
That guy might be a Nazi.
Agree.
No.
Death to America.
You.
Yes.
Wow.
Wow, that's weird. No way! Unbelievable. This guy's got a really good hook.
Throw our hands up.
Ooh. Wow.
But Sam, I gotta get off.
No worries. Let's. I want to just flesh this out a little bit. I mean, look, it's a free speech issue. If you don't like me...
Hey, shut up!
Thank you for calling into the Majority Report. Sam will be with you shortly.
We are back, and we have something we want to plug a little bit here.
Yeah,
Matt, you have
little community news. Jeff from Georgia is going through, needs your help right now. We have a GoFundMe. Help Jeff recover from homelessness or houselessness. He will describe it. We're not going to go into the description of all he's been going through, but if you can put up, and we'll put it in the description.
Yeah.
Jeff from Georgia, friend of the show. If you can throw him a few bucks, it would be much appreciated.
right. Do we have? Can we just put up the screen, like the page of his GoFundMe? Yeah. There he is. There's Jeff with Sam. And if you can just like Google help Jeff recover from homelessness, and we will also put the link in the podcast description and in the YouTube description, right?
Yep.
So you can find it there. Also, you can just find it, and if you see that photo, help Jeff recover from homelessness on GoFundMe. We'd really appreciate if you could help out Jeff, a great friend of the show.
Yeah, good luck, Jeff.
Yeah, you're the man, Jeff.
Also, check out Dissident Peasant. I'm not sure if he's on a hiatus for that now, but check it out anyway, the old episodes, and hopefully he's able to return to that.
Right. Definitely. Matt, so give us a little mini recap, and just enough to tease it, though, so people will go over to your channel and check it out.
Yeah, so basically, Michael Tracy saw the clip, that segment we did last week on his, I believe, could I ask who titled the video?
Would have been Dorsey.
Okay, so he had a real problem with Dorsey calling it a creepy infatuation with colleges. And Glenn Greenwald even jumped in on that one to insinuate that we were insinuating that he had some sort of sexual reason for being on college campuses.
So already quite a ways removed from the actual point, I would just observe, but anyway.
Right. And to hone in on that, by the way, Tracy reached out to me and wanted to have a substantive conversation, which I'm always open to anyone, anywhere, from the right to the left, discussion with anybody. So I agreed, and we did it that very next day after the segment. And for the first 30 minutes of our discussion, he wanted to talk about apparently the constant, I guess Emma and Matt and Brandon brought up his girlfriend during that segment, and he proceeded to talk about that for 30 minutes. And I had to explain to him that it's a joke based on the Glenn Greenwald tweet, where he seemingly out of thin air decided to drop the fact that Michael Tracy has gotten himself a delightful girlfriend. And that's what we were riffing on. We don't really care about Michael Tracy's personal life or his relationship status.
And I gotta say, I think he doesn't really care either, but that's just a much more comfortable thing to talk about, this sort of grievance of how you guys are mean to me, making fun of it. Which, by the way, it wasn't just Glenn that brought her up out of nowhere. It was him in response to a weird question about if he's on the autism spectrum. He's like, well, by the way, I have a girlfriend. It's like, well, that's a very strange response.
Well, there's a little bit of ableism in there, too. Like, pretty sure that people on the autism spectrum have girlfriends doesn't disprove anything.
Yeah. And I
didn't even know that part. To me, the delightful girlfriend mentioned from Glenn was enough for me to completely.
It's definitely enough.
But anyway, after 30 minutes of him airing his grievances about the Majority Report's jokes, which he called I think he called this a gossip show or something. Which I mean, you could watch the first half of the show and see if you would consider that something you'd find on TMZ. But I would say that sometimes on the second half, we do have a little bit of fun.
Yes, I think
it is called the fun half.
Yes. Yes.
But so then the crux of the issue is obviously him thinking that there is some big reasons to pay attention to what's going on at college campuses, because what happens at college campuses seeps off into the greater culture and seeps off into society as a whole, which I know it does to an extent, but I brought up to him that he's not talking about the very powerful people or the money that flows through or stuff like that, or even the educational curriculum, which I do understand somewhat, being that obviously what people are taught goes on to stay with them afterwards. I brought up, though, that his creepy infatuation, quote unquote, seems to be simply with college campus, on-campus policy, student life stuff, what's going on in the dorm rooms and stuff. And I was like, that's just inconsequential. It doesn't matter. Once you leave college, stuff, you not being able to bring someone into your dorm during a certain period of time does not have any bearing on your life after college whatsoever.
Matt, you said yourself that what these bureaucrats at colleges do can seep into the wider society. And what would happen if, say, border security got wind of what they're doing with COVID and used bullshit COVID safety justifications to just increase their powers too? We don't really want that to happen.
I know, it's unfathomable, but it could happen.
That's something I brought up, but not that specific example. But my example was, Michael, we're seeing all these mandates being instituted all across the country, all around the world, different types of mandates, vaccination mandates, mask mandates, rules surrounding that. And this all happened well before the student year began. So where are these creeping policies going to? Like, it seems to me you have a chicken and the egg scenario when there's not that. I mean, we've already seen these policies enacted and outside the schools. But one thing that really stood out to me, and this is what he's harping on now. And I will say we had it was heated at times, but we had a respectful debate. But one thing that he's harping on now that I focused on was the fact that he billed this as a journalistic endeavor. Now, granted, there is journalism, there is reporting where you go out and talk to people and then proceed to report on what those people said. If this was a piece of reporting where the point of it was, this is what's happening at Connecticut College. That's the school he focused on with no more than 2,000 students, small liberal arts college in Connecticut. If it was just, this is what the current discourse of college on the college campus at Connecticut College was, then congratulations. That is a piece of reporting. That's what you did. You got, exactly from the students what they were feeling. But that's not what this reporting was about. This was about this fact that you believe that these college policies were, they just weren't necessary. You believe they did nothing to stop any sort of pandemic outbreak at the school or beyond. And you shared a lot of your opinion on how this mask mandate's not stupid, the quarantine mandate is stupid. So I asked him, did you speak to anyone with expertise in the field, medical field, public health field? And he claims that he did, but all off the record. So I asked him, I asked him, you couldn't get a single quote from someone? Like, no one wanted to speak to you about this on the record? I even said, which a lot of his listeners seem to have not heard, but it's on video during the debate. I even said, you could have found someone who agreed with you, who is an expert in that field. There are plenty of people out there who have a contrarian position, even in those fields. You have an entire organization run by like Dr. Pierre Corey, who I'm sure could have given you, the frontline COVID people who could have given you a quote on that. But he said, he didn't think it was necessary. He doesn't think it's necessary to get expert opinion when reporting. Which to me, I don't know how you can then give that opinion without it being an opinion piece, because you need that reporting from an expert in the field to actually give weight to your opinion and for you to be able to say that this is a journalistic approach to this. But, everyone has their own definition of journalism, I guess.
Yeah, so for some, it's just getting your ass off the couch with a karaoke machine.
Yeah, for some, it's like, when I go down and go and sing karaoke with my friends at 11:30, maybe after a few drinks, I'm just chasing the Pulitzer.
Coincidentally, during the debate, I don't know if my name came up, but I guess I heard it did, but I was followed by one Richard Spencer. So just coincidentally.
Oh, you were?
I don't know if that's necessarily related to what was going on at the debate on Rockfin and the community he's reaching over there. Like you said, like he deleted the or somehow lost the live stream, so we can't see the type of audience he's cultivating in the comments section. But I was just followed by Richard Spencer on Friday night out of the blue. So.
Right. Now, I would never say that, everyone's got asshole fans, but I would say when all of your fans are assholes, then you need to look within and see, what am I doing to attract that type of person?
Yeah. I'll just say, this wasn't Tracy was a different person in that same cohort, but hitting Biden on the Haitian migrants at the border, but in a very non-committal way where you don't really say anything. Like, you're just saying, oh, this is hypocrisy by liberals. And then if the quote tweets are, what do we owe these people? They're not following our laws, send them back. If anybody, even a single person, quote tweeted me with that sentiment, I would argue with them or block them.
Yeah.
These people don't, because, and I think you'll find in their Twitter lets you look at quote tweets now. That's the base that I suggest that these people are cultivating. But I appreciate Binder's willingness to have a good faith debate.
You know, he actually pressed me on what we were discussing last week about what could possibly we mentioned like a few of the types that possibly have this hang up, this obsession with college campus life. And I had mentioned one, which was like someone who can't get over their good old college days and aren't happy with adulthood. I gave it up to him that I believe that he didn't fit that type, but then he asked me about the right-wing grifter type, and I said, yeah, I think that does fit you. We brought up the fact that we actually met. I met Michael Tracy once long ago down at Occupy Wall Street in 2011, and I brought it up to him. I was like, listen, like obviously people change and people have different views, but it's a stark difference from like the Michael Tracy I met 10 years ago. And I think whether or not you actually care about college campuses, it doesn't matter to me. Let's just say you do, but it certainly informs you how your audience reacts to your work on college campuses, certainly informs whether you continue to pursue it at the level you have. And here you are just constantly talking about it now.
Right. Yeah, I mean, he's like
to the exclusion of other things.
Real things.
Just to jump in, I was kind of unaware that any of this happened, so I feel a little bit taken aback. I was battling my own internal demons this weekend, sloth and gluttony, and they won those battles. But just to like the idea of right-wing archetypes being concerned with college campuses. It's not too surprising because I think college campuses are the one place in our society where you have adult age people who are still sort of in that mindset where they kind of feel like they should have to listen to other adult age people just because they take an air of authority. So I think, you have a lot of right-wing, Steven Crowder types who want to debate people on college campuses because they know that's the one place in our society where they're going to be able to debate like adults who still feel that they just owe a certain amount of deference to people who are slightly older than they are. And now that that's being, eroded away because people are becoming more able to educate themselves earlier about the ways in which college is not that, effective at guaranteeing certain outcomes, et cetera, going to college campuses as Charles Murray and preaching, what the bell curve 30 years after it's been debunked is just not effective. Now you have a cohort of adult age college students, 18 to 23 or however old they are, who no longer feel like they have to behave as though they were like high school age learners. They can fight back against bad ideas in a way that, right wingers don't like. But, and that's the thing that I would say is a little bit weird about, not Michael Tracy specifically, but the right wing grifter types who just want that kind of deference from other adult age, like, basically other adults, is that it's entitled. It's an entitlement that you feel like you should be able to go to some place where other adults are, not children, not people who have invited you there, and force other adults to listen to whatever you want them to say. You're proselytizing about religion or proselytizing about like right-wing facts, and that they don't have a right to like engage with you as though they're adults who don't want you there in their space.
Right. One thing that didn't hit me, and then we can move on, but I just wanted to bring it up because I didn't get a chance to, because it didn't hit me during the debate as much until after, is at one point he tried to call me he tried to say that I lacked empathy because I straight up told him that because he had this complete focus on like, what about these kids who are missing out on their college experience? And I said, frankly, straight up, I don't care. I don't care if your college experience has been has faced a negative, like if it's been ruined because of the pandemic. I'm sorry it happened. It sucks. But truthfully, I don't care. College is not that big of a thing to me. You move on in life and college will literally mean nothing for you once you're out of there. It doesn't matter. And he said, I lacked empathy by not caring about that. And then proceeded to say that all these policies are dumb because it's just old people dying. And so it doesn't matter that people wear masks or quarantine or not go out and do things if they have COVID or whatever, because, it's mostly still just old people dying. But I lack the empathy for not caring that, you missed out on prom or something.
I don't know. I think that just kind of fits into an archetype of like the right wing, I'm always joking type of person who like feels like because they're willing to joke about things that other people take personally is theoretically infinite, that they get to decide when the joking stops. You know, like Joe Rogan gets to decide when the joking stops. Like he gets to decide when he's serious and not serious. But if you say, no, he's taking horse medication, then suddenly I gotta get my lawyer, because that's like, that would make you think I'm stupid. It's like, that's just a reality of the far right convincing themselves that they're getting good at comedy, and therefore like the left is always sensitive and they shouldn't be allowed to make any kind of jokes that upset me because they're the ones who are always taking things too woke and seriously. And it's but then the moment you say any kind of thing about any far right thinker or comedian, they throw a hissy fit. They start acting like, oh my God, I can't believe that you like empathy. It's like, oh my God.
Yeah.
It's tiring. It's a little bit childish.
3 years I spent in undergrad at Minnesota State University Moorhead. We missed extended periods of time because we had to deal with flooding, whether it was to just get out of certain areas or to help sandbag things. And never once, including one time where we missed like a month and a half, like maybe it wasn't a month and a half, like a month of school. Yeah, it was crazy. And not once in my entire life have I been like, oh gosh, those floods really, really detracted from my college experience. Like, this is a complete bullshit. He doesn't believe what he's saying. I don't believe.
What is the college experience is fake. It's something colleges get by on selling you in order to make you pay $50,000 a year for a bullshit degree. It's like the college experience, like what, from Felicity? You mean when people moving to New York City to go to Pratt and like live in like improbably big apartments while like sometimes going to class, like the college experience from Gilmore Girls? Like, which college experience that like is not based from like a fictional movie are people missing out on?
Right. It's the frat parties and the college football games. It's the cinematic version of college life.
Friday Night Lights and shit. Like, it's okay.
I applaud Michael Tracy for giving those Connecticut college students some college experience and making fun of a crypto reactionary grifter that came to their campus with a karaoke.
Another thing is,
we're done.
All right. This is just it's honestly a fun conversation because
I feel like this is just a cycle that will never end though. So let's.
If you want more tonight, youtube.com/Matt Binder. I'll talk more about my Michael Tracy debate tonight.
I said give a preview.
You went into like, this somehow ends up being like a Steven Crowder-esque long story, incredibly detailed.
Yes.
Let's go to a clip. I want to play that. What is that show? The Al show? United States of Al.
Hold on. I'm getting to it now. So I saw this last night and I cannot believe that this exists. There's a show on CBS, NBC. Maybe they'll give us a little extra show money because we're calling out their competitor here. They have a sitcom called United States of Al. Basically, it's about I think he's from Afghanistan. He lives with a white family. That's the premise of it. So, mixing cultures, tension for comedy. But they decided to incorporate world events into this latest episode. Here is a preview.
Riley, is it confirmed?
The Taliban took Herat. Kabul might be next. Al's family's there.
We're at the airport. Although there's so many people, I don't think I can do this.
Listen to me. I am right there with you.
Jeez.
I'm dying. Do you remember that one scene from, what was that? I can't remember if it was the West Wing or like the Newsroom, whichever Aaron Sorkin show, when like they announced that like Osama bin Laden has been killed like on a plane, and they're like everyone just like salutes the pilot or something.
Yeah. Osama bin Laden's dead. Maybe that CBS can do a crossover episode where young Sheldon joins ISIS, and then you can get Al to be the intermediary between the evil young Sheldon and the president of the United States, and then he can drone young Sheldon, which obviously we want all of that to happen in any capacity, and then no civilians will die, and then we can have an even like greater level of propaganda for the United States war machine and manufacture consent through just symbiotic cable programming.
People should know this show is a sitcom. Apparently it's a sitcom. I've never watched it, but it's supposed to be a comedy. I guess
it is.
I guess they thought I mean, I guess they thought the whole situation was so far removed that they could create a show on it, and then oopsie, they just happened to launch this show just as Afghanistan is back in the news, regardless of the fact that we've been over there and the war was ongoing when they launched this show. I guess they just felt like it wasn't on people's minds, so they could find some sort of comedic angle to the situation. But,
well, it's not comedic. They're trying to like do a very serious episode because, yes, like the United States leaving Afghanistan has caused such a calamity, and the Taliban's taking over. And did you notice how the actor, like who plays Al, his gesticulation is like, he's a terrible actor too, and I can already tell from the promo. Like the way his shoulders move. Can we go back to that?
He's not even Afghan, by the way, which I don't think is necessary, obviously. But you think if you're gonna do a show like this, maybe you would try to have gotten an actor from who was born there or has.
But like clearly
background.
they don't. Okay, look at this. Is his dramatic acting here? Look what he does with this show.
Listen to me. I am right there with you.
All right, I don't know. I'm getting fixated on that. But do you have that Wikipedia description of another episode? This is an example of the kind of art that is in cable television these days, right? Like, you know, I don't know who watches still shows on like major networks because it's like pretty old people, right? Al greets Riley's daughter Hazel and introduces him as her godfather. On a video call with his mother, Al is berated for wearing shorts, as it is against his religion as a Muslim to do so. This is offensive. The following day, Al and Riley go to the DMV, where Al becomes nervous after seeing that his female driving instructor, Paula, is also wearing shorts, and as a result fails his driving test. Wanting to adjust to American social norms, Al talks with Riley, Art, and an offended Lizzie to sort things out, deciding to avoid forcing his religious double standards on other people. In his following visit to the DMV with Paula as his driving instructor, Al overcomes his issues by acknowledging both Paula and himself are wearing shorts, only to become nervous once again after stopping at a traffic light next to a charity car wash with bikini-clad women.
It's amazing this is like a new show, because if this were like 2005, this was, I could see like a lot of seasons. It's like, you know, Reba comes on and then this.
Yeah.
But, like, this is.
I was going to even say 90s.
Well, what was that CW show about the foreign exchange student that included Scott Patterson from Gilmore Girls? That's how I knew about it. Damn it, come on. This is when, Brandon, you're supposed to step up.
I'm sorry, what show we're talking about?
Aliens in America?
Aliens in America, yeah, that was kind of similar. A hilarious show of how a 16-year-old Pakistani exchange student adjusts to the Tolchuk household. Despite the cultural chasm between Justin and Raja, they develop an unlikely bond. So very similar trope, but that came out in what, 2007, 2006, a little bit more of that time, this show. But like, I mean, to attempt to kind of reclaim that offensive sitcom, those offensive kind of like types of sitcoms, they're like not evolving whatsoever, because it's an archaic trope no matter what.
Yeah, I know it's going to sound bad, but I miss when things were bad in simpler ways. Now that was a whole like list of problems in that synopsis that like I just, you know, makes you just wish it was Reba. Like, and then, you know, all episodes about something really problematic. That's great. It's supposed to like a million like problematic things with this like thin veneer of wokeness over it. Like, oh yeah, no, it's a show about treating immigrants as though they're people. Like, okay, great. Oh
yeah,
I can only imagine how you're gonna like, you know, make us feel that. Oh wait, no, yes I can. That was a great clip.
Yeah, it really was. Want to take a call, Matt?
Sure, let's take a call. By the way, this show is apparently viewed by millions upon millions of people. I mean,
I'm definitely gonna watch it. It got one new viewer today.
Right. Right. Let's go to the phones. Let's take 908. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hello, is this me?
This is you. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
This is Titan Taylor Green, and I'm calling from New Jersey.
Hey.
And I just wanted to talk about the recent trends, like, you know, unfortunately going on with with COVID and the deaths. It's really awesome, first and foremost, that we're getting like the cases down. Like, that's super cool. But just in theory, that we've like, no one's kind of acknowledging the fact that like we lost like 28,000 people like in the last like 2 weeks just to COVID. Like, people, you can get mad about like different things. Like, conservatives like to get very mad about, oh, murders are up. We lost, in 2020, there was like 21,000 confirmed murders, and COVID did that over that in 2 weeks. Like, why are we even, like, how could you even have that grievance when this many people are just dying every day? It's kind of just absurd. Just wanted to kind of lay that out there and hop off. You guys can comment or move on, but thanks.
I think very good point. Like, like you said, that figure 28,000, that's like 10 times more than South Korea has lost throughout the entirety of the pandemic.
No, I think that's a great point too. And I think, it really just speaks to how easily Americans are nerded by the idea of like mass deaths of, not only just citizens of other countries, but Americans at home, as long as they can be sort of convinced that it can be contained to the specific bad actor populations. And I think that was like kind of the big problem with the argument that, okay, well, we're going to eventually get to a point where everyone who wants to be vaccinated will be vaccinated very easily. And then we'll just have this like plague of the unvaccinated, which obviously they're being ravaged by the COVID more than the vaccinated people are. But like the idea that we can quarantine populations and that we can just have this mass death go on is something that Americans are used to thinking about when it comes to, mass deaths from poverty, mass deaths from gun violence, mass deaths from anything that can sort of be claimed to not be happening randomly, but happening to like populations that more or less can be said to deserve it. Right.
Well, to that end, we can talk a little bit more about COVID within the context of this Alaska mayor. This was recorded the other day. This is the mayor of Anchorage. His name is David Bronson. And his own town, Anchorage, is weighing the idea of a mask ordinance. And he made a comparison that is becoming a bit of a trope on the far right wing about unvaccinated status. It's offensive, just a warning.
I see. And just as we've referenced the Star David quite a bit here tonight, but there was a formal message that came out within Jewish culture about that, and the message was never again. Yes. That's an ethos, and that's what that star really means, is we will not forget. This will never happen again. And I think us borrowing that from them is actually a credit to them.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
I agree.
Oh, he gave credit to what was it? Just generally Jewish people wearing the Star of David?
It honestly sounds like he thinks like during the Holocaust they chose to wear those like they affixed those stars on themselves, like that was their own thing.
Right, that's what I'm saying. A credit to them for that very bold decision.
I have an alternative way that anti-vaxxers can identify themselves. They can carry around big crosses with them, and whenever they feel like they're not being oppressed enough, they can just nail themselves to it real quick. Just to make sure that like everyone knows that they're the real victims of the COVID mandates.
Yeah, crucify yourself with needles to the cross.
Yeah, right, exactly.
If Ben Garrison wasn't sick, that'd be an amazing cartoon.
You should email him, see if he takes unsolicited suggestions.
I don't need any credit. For that one. I mean, because I didn't come up with it, obviously, but I wouldn't, if I had come up with it, need any credit for it.
Right.
Yeah, I released that to Creative Commons.
We need a red, white, and blue cross, and then Christ-like
giant needles
as nails into the cross. That should be a button that they wear up in Anchorage in order to demonstrate their commitment to being unvaccinated. But I mean, like the shortness in time and like the how quickly they turn to the highest level of victimization to compare themselves to Jews in the Holocaust, and how easily they're able to do that just speaks to how much aggrievement there is in conservative culture and how quickly they can victimize themselves at the drop of the hat. And it's like they don't even really see it as ridiculous and offensive and insane it is, because they're conditioned to see themselves as the victims in society. And like, just because they don't understand, because liberal culture is so hegemonic and intrusive to their way of life, that they are like, that's just that's the default. That's pilot mode. Let's read a few more IMs. I5, American sitcoms teaching people of all backgrounds to be more tolerant of American values. Right, like that's the concept of the bikini clad woman. Like, that's super messed up. He can't drive a car because he sees a woman in a bikini. It's just like, it's not cool. Fierce Deity, I think the premise of the show is that the main white protagonist was a soldier and became friends with Al when he was in Afghanistan. Then he like brought him back with him, I guess. Very white saviory. And if I remember, the actor who plays Al is not Afghan or even Middle Eastern.
It's like Robinson Crusoe and Man Friday.
Yeah. Sparin Antonio. Michael Tracy seemed impossible to talk to. I don't know how you did it, Matt B.
Well, it was. I enjoy that type of stuff, so it was fine for me.
Yeah, I mean, it does take a special person. I don't think I would be able to do it. Although I did, when we were colleagues, I did attempt to speak with him, but Alan Ivermectin, remember when sitcoms had non-political, very special episodes like Alex getting addicted to speed on Family Ties? I miss the 80s.
I remember when Will Smith got shot on the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, and Carlton brings a gun into like his hospital room, and Will has to take it from him and then like empty the revolver into his like lap in like the hospital bed, very vividly. And to this day, that's why I'm against gun violence. Thank you, Alfonso Ribeiro. You have my number if you ever need anything.
Big Dick Cheney energy. Look up a writer named Dylan Park on Twitter. He says he pitched this show to CBS as a drama, then they stole it and turned it into a sitcom. He's currently prepping a lawsuit against the network.
He definitely should sue, but I think they were right to make it a comedy. I can't deny that.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate the lawsuit. Go after them with all of your might, and hopefully you win. But there's no way that at least the premise that we saw isn't in some way comedic.
I have another premise that that sort of spins off from this. You could do like a Kevin Can Fuck Himself style show where like Al pretends to be like integrating into America, but he's actually like a sleeper agent for like an anti-American, like Select the Americans. I mean,
false flag Americanization. Yeah, I'm all
so
for
it goes from like sitcom filming to like more gritty, like 24 style filming whenever his white savior friend is not on the camera.
Right, exactly.
I just discovered another show. Hadn't heard of Kevin Can Fuck Himself?
Yeah.
I don't have to check that one out too, along with United States of Al.
James Darwin. In the mid-1960s, Noam Chomsky wrote The Responsibility of Intellectuals to Condemn Technocrats Within the University System Who Benefited from the War Economy, including his own school of MIT. This is very different from interviewing a bunch of post-adolescents about cancel culture when all they really want is to get their junk touched. Big difference. Aaron is not cool. I was in the comments during the live stream and they kept spamming mass hysteria and bashing Matt's looks and faces to Tracy's 20-minute rants.
I mean, compared to Mike Tracy, nobody looks great.
Right, exactly.
Well, that's fine. I don't mind that type of stuff. I did see them bring up, there was someone spamming some anti-Semitic stuff about Sam in the chat, which,
Lovely.
And I did bring, I brought up the different conspiracies, like the Great Replacement stuff that's out there due to COVID, and the Great Reset. That's another one due to COVID. And Michael's like, I don't believe in that stuff. And then I looked in his chat, and it was just a bunch of people saying, "How dare Matt say this is a conspiracy? This is real. It's real. It's the real thing."
Penelope inked. M. Tracy seemed to go out of his way to mispronounce Emma's name. Like, we worked together for a few years. It was a little odd.
He did mispronounce your last name, but he also mispronounced my last name, and I was right there.
Mispronounce Emma.
Yeah, he probably said
last name.
Vigeland or Vigeland or whatever.
Oh, I misunderstood.
Yeah, let's take another call.
Let's go to the phones. Let's do this one right here. 609. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
This is Ben in Vermont.
Hey, Ben in Vermont. What would you like to talk about?
Well, I'm irate right now because a couple of weeks ago, maybe it was last week, there was somebody who called into the show who was like an HVAC contractor or something in Florida and was like saying how like, oh, nobody follows installation standards or codes or anything. And I typically would never call into a show, but I'm an engineer, and so this is very close to me because I'm a professional engineer in multiple states, and that is so wrong. Like there are so many good, reputable engineers and contractors in this country that do this work by the book, and they do good quality work. And so that person should not be, that person who called last week and was saying this should not be taken seriously. That is the minority. And I needed to get that out there because that just really rankled me. So,
I mean, he was a libertarian and a self-defined one. So, I mean, that's kind of what you think you're going to get, right?
How libertarian is it to assume, though, that because you don't believe in the regulations that nobody else follows them? You know, like it was so anecdotal.
Like it was just like, it just really bugged me because, like I said, it's something I deal with every single day.
Yeah, and isn't that just kind of sometimes conservatism distilled, right? Extrapolating my own personal experience to just general society.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So, well, I love what you guys are doing. Thanks for taking my call. Have a good rest of your day.
Yeah,
thank you.
You too. Appreciate the call.
I'm especially that's a very good call because that call made a pretty bad impression about Florida, like HVAC repairmen, for instance.
Yeah.
Let's take another call, right?
Go for it. Yeah.
Let's go to 469. What's your name? Where are you calling from? 469.
Is this me?
This is you.
Hey, this is Hayden from Dallas.
Hey, Hayden from Dallas. What would you like to talk about?
Just two things. One quick thing, because I know y'all talked about the Michael Tracy stuff a lot. So I was in there, and I was poking fun at their chat just every once in a while whenever going on through the debate. And I loved the comments in there. They were absolutely insane.
Right. They were nuts. It was, I mean, I really wish that stuff was saved because I think that that's a whole nother angle or a whole nother, line there with what's going on. It's not just a debate. It's who tuned in to watch it and what they were saying.
Yeah.
What was that?
I completely agree. What were you saying, Matt?
I just said it's how you're being received, and right over the course of time. I think it actually says a lot. We keep our chat live. You have the option to make it disappear after the end of the live stream, but we keep it up. And I think I understand why other shows would want to remove theirs.
Oh yeah, and like I think I got them a little riled up at the end, and the anti-Semitic came out a little at the very end. So I don't know if that was the reason why that he just straight up ended the stream and like deleted all the live chat, but who knows?
Well, I'm not gonna speculate. He says it was a technical difficulty, so I'll take it at that. My only opinion on that is that it's unfortunate that's no longer there because I think watching that with the comments adds an extra layer to what's being talked about. And then next time it's a lesson learned too. Next time I do a debate or a live stream with someone who has a differing opinion and is somewhat of a contrarian on the right, I will make sure I record my own version locally just in case any technical difficulties come about again.
Appreciate the call. Thank you so much.
No problem, y'all.
Have a good one. Just wanted to get to some breaking news here.
Breaking news.
The Senate passed the government funding bill, meaning the government will be funded until December 3rd, most likely, because the bill has to go to the House, but it's going to include some different provisions. the original version didn't include the Iron Dome funding, the extra Iron Dome funding. We don't know the full details of how it was passed, but it's going to go to the House. And if they don't pass this, the government shuts down at midnight tonight, so it's very likely to pass. But that means that we're going to be, over the course of the next few months, most likely, because I don't think this Pelosi vote is going to happen today, debating both infrastructure and debt ceiling and government funding. We might have to do a third reconciliation process, even though Schumer and Dick Durbin was saying we don't want to set the precedent of raising the debt ceiling through reconciliation, because it should be do away with the fucking debt ceiling. But
yeah, who cares how you get rid of it?
Yeah, I know. Like, exactly.
The debt ceiling is a precedent that should have never been set.
Yeah, the debt ceiling shouldn't exist, one. But two, it's like, yeah, well, you're just wasting your time because McConnell is going to obstruct. He's not going to have an aha moment where a light bulb goes off at the top of his head where he's like, maybe they're right. Maybe just because we raised the debt ceiling by trillions during our time, I'm a hypocrite for not wanting to do it now. No, like, we're not having a good faith debate, Senate. Wake up, Dick Durbin and others like him. He wants to do it in order to just muddy and muck up the Biden agenda as much as possible, and to throw this into the infrastructure fight to make it more difficult, because I think that's going to extend beyond today. So, wakey, stop. Anyway, let's do that.
I like that.
It's just like, I can't deal with like this, obsessive commitment to these arcane senatorial procedures. It's like, it's so myopic and it's so outdated and arcane, and it's just like nonsense. Speaking of nonsense, Dave Rubin.
Nice
my favorite.
Right, I had a hot take.
Long-term hero.
Yeah, obviously, fan of the show, Dave Rubin. He had some commentary about Greta Thunberg. Oh, look at that. Or Greta Thunberg, as they say it in the United States. She had a speech that went viral where she mocked the Biden administration and other Western countries' climate pledges because of the empty words that they contain. And Dave had a response to that speech that was predictably stupid and nonsensical.
Okay, I don't even think I have to address anything that she said there in her blah, blah, blah speech, but I wanted to show it because of the tone and the anger, and then the masked clones all applauding her at the end as she's telling us how everyone before her are basically evil. That's what she's saying. They've had their chance, now our chance. Now it's our chance. Like, just imagine if this girl had enough power, the horrible things that she would do to people. Like, I am not going to be the only one who could see like little sort of imagery of Hitler speaking up there, right? Like little there Hitler. Was these people that think that they can control the world, and if you just gave them enough money.
I go back like 20 seconds. I'm not the only one that's going to see little imagery of like Hitler up there.
Little imagery, right?
You're the only one, Dave.
Yeah. He's having like a hallucination as she goes up there and says blah, 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 and chuckles a little bit.
What's Greta Thunberg's beer hall push?
Yeah, what's that like little black mustache that's kind of appearing very faintly above her upper lip? I mean, Dave, are you just having some sort of hallucination? I don't know. Like
the funny thing about that, when people always like compare not when people, but when he compares, her to Hitler, that he hangs out with people who defend Hitler all the time, who have like positive things to say about Hitler, like Candace Owens, any number of right-wing thinkers will be like, well, yeah, the problem was when Hitler decided to leave Germany, but before then he was just making trains run on time.
Yeah, and it's amazing to me how they constantly want to make the Hitler totalitarian comparison to the left, and he mentions masked drones there, or masked clones, as if we're talking about the second Star Wars prequel, I guess, and maybe mixing some Hitler metaphors there. I mentioned this on the show the other day. Hitler was in favor of compulsory vaccinations, but only for the master race German types. There's documentation about it. He wanted to not allow access for Jews and other groups to vaccines so that they would die, and then the master class would emerge, the master race would emerge. So that is the history of what Hitler believed when it comes to pandemics and vaccinations. But let's let Dave make his point. Maybe he'll bring it all together at the end.
Going to be the only one who could see like little sort of imagery of Hitler speaking up there, right? Like there was these people that think that they can control the world, and if you just gave them enough money and enough power, they could do it. Man, we have unearthed something so horrible by our elite class and our intellectual class being so dishonest with us for so long. We have unleashed something that basically every Western nation is under attack from every which direction. But that anger of that little girl, it's just disturbing. Anyway, I wanted to just show you that because it's just like, where are the adults? We need some adults.
No, the reason she's angry is because the adults are doing nothing about climate change. And that's why she says, like, we're the next generation. We are going to make sure that we hold you accountable. That is the message of her speech. But we need the adults to do nothing. Dave at least said it there.
I don't know. Ruben is so far removed away from like the beginnings of like he was a leftist who's been like, you know, expelled from the left from having complex ideas. It's just hard to understand what he's talking about at this point anymore. Like, you know, he's arguing
complex.
It's like we're just so far removed from like the beginnings and core of like his legitimacy that like it's somehow like he's just criticizing the left from the left, that these videos just come across as so weird now. Like, you know, like rambling weirdness when it comes like making fun of Greta Thunberg, taking shots of tequila on, you know, on but off camera. It's really devolving his brand.
Yeah,
the thing is, go ahead, Matt. No, go ahead.
I was going to say, like, the system where an individual can have enough money and power to control, if not the world, much of it, is the current system we have now, where Jeff Bezos and Bill Gates, just to name one single person, has a massive influence over the education system in this country, over software in this country, or intellectual property in general. And not only that, but also he's one of the biggest owners of farmland in this country. That's capitalism, Dave. Like, that's the conspiracy. That's where an individual is able to exert basically coercion over much of the world, particularly the people inside of it. And no individual should. That's a big problem, and that's why you know, we should have democracy.
Well, I mean, they're okay with that. They're okay with like the idea of people using private money to exert extreme influences over like the rest of society. They just want to be those people, and also they want to make sure that if they aren't those people, that we as a society, either formally or informally, ensure that like the wrong people don't ever get that power. Like,
and the wrong people meaning like now children, right? I believe the children,
Black people, really, you know.
Right. Well, in this instance, right, it's like this uppity child that's speaking about it, like how we need to threaten existing capital. I believe the children are our future, and that's why our future is going to be Hitler again.
Well, there are plenty of adults who are saying the same thing that he could have brought up, who are saying the same thing as Greta Thunberg, or again, I apologize for mispronouncing her name, or any number of like children activists like the Sunshine Project, etc. But you know, conservatives go after children because they're at the same like intellectual level as them, and so it makes them feel like, well, you see, you know, the follies of youth. Only college kids and hippies and children think that the climate is collapsing, when there's like, you know, any climate scientist that you can talk to would say the same thing or more, you know, more aggressive talking points on climate change and where we're at.
Well, it's pretty rude to Greta to say that she's on the same intellectual level as Dave. Brandon, so I don't know.
Yeah, and the thing is, like,
he might be. She's a little bit better than him.
I'm trying to be nice to people.
Yeah.
Dave did a whole show about how like Greta is calling out the UN climate change people. It's like attacking people on her side. It's like, yeah, because those people, Dave, are the ones who you're actually working for. Really, when you say like that she's being too harsh or whatever she's being on them. Basically, our global international climate agreements have been people sitting on their ass and not doing what needs to be done for 20 years now. And Greta's young enough, or like at her young age, is able to understand basically what every environmental activist understands about these people is that's what they need. They don't like. I don't know if it's Hitlerian to say do your effing job and save the planet.
Well, I mean, that was also I think I talked about this on my last show. That was also the narrative that her entire generation and my entire generation was taught about, like the solving problems of the future. Like I remember the 90s, and I think Obama just said the same thing. We're like, okay, we're, our parents or, our parents' parents were just starting to come to grips with like the problems in their minds of climate change and racism. And the solution was not doing anything proactive. It was like, well, eventually, the cohort of leaders will matriculate out and we'll just have a younger, more woke population by inherent characteristics of the country changing, like the demography, the demographics and stuff. But like what no one was prepared for was that like our leaders, our gerontocracy would hold on until their hundreds, and so by the time the Nancy Pelosi's and Mitch McConnell's of the world are going to go out, it's just like it's going to be too late. And so I can only imagine the people who are like Gen Z and millennials who are still hearing like Obama come out and say like, well, what gives me hope for the future is that one day, eventually, someone who cares will be in charge. Because, I think our generation is much more willing to understand that, well, it's just going to be too late.
Yeah.
Dave Rubin is just not. I mean, that's. I feel like this is what we say after every. The thing is, he's just not that smart. I mean, even in his own little right-wing media circles, I mean, he can't even get like their own talking points down. He's just completely out there. Just not very good at what he does. Let's put it that way.
I like Dave Rubin. I think that he brings a level of earnest charm to far right media that it's been lacking, and I think it's shameful that like all the other far right content makers have kind of like distanced themselves from him recently, probably for reasons that you said, Matt. But still
sad
days. The right's eating itself.
Exactly.
Is that the expression?
Hashtag GOP exit. Matt, you want to take a call?
Sure, let's do it. Let's go to 266. What's your name? Where are you calling from? 26. Hello.
Yeah, hi, this is me, sorry.
Oh, hey, who's this and where are you calling from?
Yeah, hi, this is Jack. I'm calling from across the pond in Birmingham, England.
Ah, how are you doing? What would you like to talk about?
I'm good, thank you. Just want to say quickly, I've been a huge fan of the show since about 2015, and I'm really pleased that Emma seemed to find her feet after obviously what happened with Michael, rest in peace and all that. I want to talk about a story, admittedly it's going to be a little bit depressing. Are you aware of a shooting that happened in the UK about a month ago?
I feel like I did hear about it because that's not a usual thing in the UK, right? But why don't you tell us?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to say anything too incriminating or anything like that, but the guy, he shot about 5 people in the space of 12 minutes, rather than being unfortunately 3 years old. And like you say, we don't really have any gun violence on a massive scale like what you do, but the reason why I bring it up is because he was heavily influenced by the incel community and indeed the like US gun politics and indeed right-wing politics in America.
Right.
And the reason.
What was his name? I'm sorry.
And the reason. His name was Jake Davidson.
Okay.
He was a guy on YouTube. I don't know what particular things he was influenced by in America, but he was influenced by, like I said, incel community and like gun politics in America. And I mean, I thought we had bad people on our side. We've got like Nigel Farage in the UK. You guys seem to have it more like a calamitous scale.
Oh, this was the guy. This was the guy who was like a huge Trump supporter, even though he wasn't American, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Right, I remember this now.
The reason why I bring it up is because it seems to be that in like political consensus in the UK, we seem to have adopted, for better or for worse, like US talking points and US style kind of like politics. And I just want to hear as like an example, or maybe a point from any of you guys. What is the best way to try and combat that kind of like toxic and poisonous dialogue?
Well, obviously, it's a work in progress, being that we've already all agreed upon the fact that we have it much worse here in terms of these sort of mass shootings. I honestly, it's hard because there's a number of things. Obviously, this person, being that he was in the UK, I'm sure he wasn't, going down to a local bar and finding his gaggle of big Trump supporters who just naturally are there. You know what I mean? So obviously, he was getting a lot of this stuff online. I don't recall. Do you remember it? It was just incel they tagged him as. Was there any other sort of communities? Did they ever find any QAnon connections or any other white supremacy, Proud Boy connections, anything like that?
Well, they've been particularly vague, like the mainstream press over here. I got an article coming up from the Independent about 2 days ago, which says that it wasn't a terror attack. And I don't know how we can describe I don't know how we can describe a pointless murder of 5 people as not a terror attack. That's a different point entirely.
Yeah.
It says that he was, had links to like a lot of like incel community stuff, and like he was really fascinated by gun culture and politics. And maybe I'm being a bit biased, but I just can't imagine someone with like a socialist or like left-wing background being that quite feeling empowered by like gun violence. But the reason why I bring it up is because it seems to be a case, particularly with us now, that we seem to be getting a bit more radicalized people who are influenced by your side of the Atlantic.
Right. I mean, it's bad here. The polarization, political polarization here is bad. I mean, it's these right wingers love to push that, oh, we're headed towards a second civil war, and I don't agree with that type of nonsense. But it's very polarized amongst a very small but loud subset of right wingers who are seeing everything they believe. We're going away from everything they believe. Progress, social justice, all these things are not things that they're too happy about, and they're bothered by it. Obviously, the pandemic has amped everything up because obviously it more directly affects people's everyday lives, and they're unhappy with the things there, and they see this as a takeover on the left, thanks to all sorts of different, political pushes to politicize even the pandemic. And obviously the conspiracy theories and anti-vax nonsense that permeates online. It's something that obviously social media is just a medium for the most part, but there's no denying how much it's played a role here. And obviously a lot of these companies who run these services, they don't help in terms of basically building their platforms to promote this content because they want more engagement. And what gets engagement? This type of stuff that elicits a reaction, an emotional response out of people. And so this is sort of where we are as to, it's spreading overseas. I mean, this guy, from what I understand from what I remember reading about him, he had issues with his mother, right? And he even had the police.
Well, his mom was one of the people who was shot.
She was the first person, I believe, right? And then he left her house after shooting her and started shooting people out on the street right in front of her home, right? I mean, the cops checked on him. I mean, this is also a failure from law enforcement, right? To not take this stuff seriously. I mean, we constantly hear from people who are defund the police or any sort of police accountability that we need police officers, otherwise it's anarchy. But I mean, we see time and time again where police just don't take these situations seriously because they're not trained or adequately educated to take care of situations involving people like this. And they go knock on someone's door, and, this guy probably was able to win them over by just saying, I'm fine. Who knows? Maybe even his Make America Great Again hat was funny or got him a pat on the back from law enforcement. We know how much law enforcement likes a lot of right-wing politics. So we don't know. It's
interesting that you bring that up, because it's interesting you bring it up because he actually had his gun license was taken away from him. And then about a few weeks before he did the horrible deed, he got it back. So he talked about police incompetence. That's one example of that happening.
Right. I mean, it's a situation where obviously this isn't all the time, and obviously this isn't going to fix every issue, but a lot of these people, especially when they post in advance on social media, which when it's politically motivated, a lot of the time that's part of it. They do. It's not just a random act of violence that doesn't make any, like, you can go online and see the situation actually being like journaled, like you're reading into someone's diary made public thanks to social media. You could see where this was headed. And a lot of times police are even asked to get involved beforehand. And, they just don't take it seriously. I mean, I guess there are laws there are laws that tie their hands about what they can do in advance, but I'm not even saying like arrest people just for like, the idea they could do something. I'm saying like maybe they should have been monitoring this guy and see where things were going, at least for a little bit. They take away his license and they just give it back to him after a few weeks. What happened within those few weeks to make that decision? I mean, it doesn't make any sense to do that.
So I've got some details from the Daily Beast here. Davison's mother disapproved of her son's misogynistic views, and the two clashed frequently, an acquaintance told the Telegraph. Davison also, quote, beat up his father a couple months ago, according to another source. Davison urgently needed medical health treatment, but wasn't able to get it in time, a family friend reportedly wrote. Basically, the NHS needs to be expanded and staffed better, and also the cops didn't want to do anything either. And we have also details about his Facebook stuff. And it says Davison's Facebook like suggests he was obsessed with conservative U.S. politics. He followed the pages of Trump, all of his children, and several Trump businesses, as well as the pages of the NRA, Fox News, Breitbart, Ted Cruz, Ben Carson, and one called Ted Nugent for president.
Yep. I mean, this is in the UK.
That's a perfect example of that happening, isn't it? I mean, there's one thing as well that I wanted to bring up is that in some of his videos, I never watched the videos because I only heard about the man after he killed himself and killed people. But he always said he was bullied and things like that. And, I don't condone, no matter who you are, I don't condone any kind of bullying. Like I myself was bullied when I was in school, etc. But the unfortunate thing that happened to him is that he was taken in by these absolute crackpots, like the people that Matt just mentioned, and he got brainwashed into believing that that was a great way of showing his manhood and showing that, he's not as cowardly as the bullies made him. It's unfortunate.
Right. I mean, here's one thing. Like, obviously, incels are a very toxic culture, and we've seen time and time again that they're dangerous. There have been a number of shootings, or even shootings that were thwarted, or planned, I should say, shootings that were thwarted that are connected to incels. But here's the thing with them, though. They're like sort of that old school style, like men's rights activists who, like, there's politics there, but it's not inherently political. Like, this guy obviously was very into politics, but his inceldom comes from his hatred towards women. And we know misogyny usually turns to real world physical violence many times. But again, like, there is a sort of failure, I guess, to cover these types of issues as much, because the incel community doesn't have that straight up like tie, even though many of them are white supremacists and many of them are probably Trump supporters. It's just not like the same as, like, being able to say, like, look at these people who are literally breaking into the Capitol, which is unfortunate, because we're seeing that these incels are dangerous. I mean, whenever this happens, whenever there's a shooting like this that's tied to incels, you could go online and find within these communities, they're cheering this on. And they basically, people who are familiar with this probably know this already, but incels basically like worship that shooter from probably almost a decade ago, Elliot Rodgers, probably the earliest of like the incel shooters. He was like the son of like a Hollywood producer who killed his roommates and then went on a mass shooting based on seeing like women with men who he saw like to be in relationships. So he would shoot them. And they basically, like, whenever one of these things happen, they compare it to like, how well did they do compared to Elliot Rodgers? Like, this is a sick world, and it doesn't get the attention it needs. And I think hopefully more people will open up their eyes to this stuff.
Appreciate the call, man. Thank you.
I mean, thank you very much. If there was a God, you're doing God's work. Cheers, guys. Love the program.
Yep. Thanks so much.
Someone just mentioned to me to say that the Jeff from Georgia.
Hold on. Yeah, that's what I wanna.
go ahead.
Yeah, pull up. So, you guys are amazing. I mean, check this out. Since we mentioned this at the start of the fun half, Jeff from Georgia is so much closer to his goal.
Thank you guys.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. Look at this. So his goal is 5,000. We have $4,270 raised at this point. Wow. And Larry Murphy donated $500. I mean, that's just like amazing. Maybe even, before 3 o'clock Eastern hits, hopefully we can get Jeff over his $5,000 goal here. So I just wanted to make sure that if you say you tuned in a little bit later, you didn't know that Jeff's going through a bit of a hard time. You can find the link to Jeff's GoFundMe in the podcast description and in the YouTube description if you want to help out. But he's almost there at his goal. And you can also find him over at his Twitter handle, which is dissident peasant, right? Yep. Dissident peasant at Jeff his dudeness, and the link is there as well. So appreciate you guys so much. That's really awesome. All right. Do you have a clip that you want to get to, either of you guys?
Why don't you pick, Brandon, being that I feel like I had my Michael Tracy moment segment, and Emma picked a clip or two. Why don't you go ahead?
I think that we might be running up on time. Doesn't Emma have to get ready for her 2:30 show? So, I mean,
good point.
Out of respect for women.
You just don't have a clip in mind. You just didn't even look at the list.
No, first of all, I have the list pulled up. I'm not that person in class. I might not do the reading, but at least I have the spark notes up.
All right, well then let's just do this quick Sean Hannity clip. Or wait, well, we do have. Sorry, what'd you say?
Let's do Candace Owens.
Okay. Oh yeah, Candace Owens is really fun. So Greg Gutfeld and Candace Owens were speaking together, I guess, on Candace Owens' program with the Daily Wire. Greg Gutfeld and Candace Owens decided that they were going to tackle a discussion about homelessness. And I am sure that during the course of this discussion, they will treat it with respect, and they will not say anything horrible about homeless people.
People love zombie movies, but it's not fun when you live it. And right now, because I go up 6th Avenue every day, and I see legit zombies, people that the world have just tossed aside, and they don't crave human flesh like they.
They are not legit zombies. Jesus, dude. They are people who might be, like, I don't know, victims of capitalism or mental health.
People like you every fucking day going online to say exactly what Candace Owens is about to say. And yeah, like they're put there by you. And the idea that like what zombie movie you just walk past the zombies and like feel bad for them. Yeah. That's not a zombie movie.
Or also, what is a legit zombie?
Also, yeah, they're literally zombies. No, they're not.
Well, 28 days later.
He doesn't walk past them and feel bad for them. He walks past them and compares them to zombies, like monsters. But I mean, like, what a way to start
everyone
off that
else
clip.
is put aside. I'm just calling them zombies.
Oh, and by the way, as you mentioned, right, he's in that position because of people like you, right? Like, there's no recognition that, I don't know, dude, if you didn't want to see said zombies, support universal housing programs, and that's all we need to do. Bing bang boom. But continue.
Up 6th Avenue every day, and I see legit zombies, people that the world have just tossed aside, and they don't crave human flesh like the Hollywood version, but it's almost worse because we're just ignoring it. Like $1 billion spent on homelessness, and there are people lying around on the streets.
I'd like to see an accounting of that.
Yeah, it was de Blasio's wife.
Right.
He was in charge of that, so no one counted it.
Right, exactly. And then, that's the thing that's also so ridiculous is I have uncles, I came from poverty, but I have uncles who live on the streets. There's this weird idea they fantasize about who homeless people are as if they're all just trying for a better life. These people are drug addicts. Yeah, if you give them a house, they'll rip the pipes out and sell it to get the drugs. People don't understand this.
There's a high high fraction of mentally ill, drug addicted, and I watched they'll send people out to talk to them on the street.
Yeah, by the way, I didn't realize that in order for people to have shelter that you've got to like take care of your home to a certain degree, and didn't realize that pipes were really hot on the black market in order to sell to purchase
Copper pipes
drugs.
are if you want to strip the whole thing, but at the end of the day, it's interesting that they feel this way because it seems as though they acknowledge that the system that we have requires that some people fall through the cracks and experience the extreme maldistribution of resources so that some people can have an extreme surplus. But, they just want that to exist out there somewhere in an abstract. It has to still exist, but they don't want to ever be forced to see it, which I think is just a completely unreasonable thing for people who support the system to ever say. It's like, well, you understand that for you to make like $1 million from like spouting hate, some people have to be the victims of that hate, so you should have to see them, at the very least. It's like the whole you want to live in a society where we execute criminals, it should be played publicly. Everyone should have to watch it.
Also would love to find Candace Owens's uncles and find out what they think.
He disowned her. They might be drug addicts, but they have standards.
right.
They might rip the copper pipes out of a house, but they don't hang out with people like Candace. That's like that's a little bit low brow.
Well, that's another thing. So we've moved on from people who are homeless to drug addicts who, by the way, like shouldn't have to rip pipes out of the wall or take like copper out of like wires in order to get drugs. They should be treated like with a medical problem, which is what they have. Like the idea that that's just the only thing that drug addicts can do is be forced to go to the black market and be excluded from healthcare and actually addressing their addiction in any kind of real way.
Well, she frames it like as if this is a 1970s definition of people who've experienced addiction. They don't actually want to get better. That's what she said there. She said that they don't want to exist in society. We treat them as, oh, poor them, right? But they don't want to be a part of society or else they'd stop taking drugs. And of course, let's note that she specifically codes these experiences with like her own relatives in a way that someone like a white racist like Greg Gutfeld and the people that watch her are able to be like, of course, yeah, but she's one of the good ones. Let's finish hearing what they had to say.
Isn't she still banned from Fox though? Isn't she not allowed out on there anymore?
I don't know. Maybe that's why he had to come to the Daily Wire set.
People don't understand this.
There's a high fraction of mentally ill, drug addicted, and I watched they'll send people out to talk to them on the street, and I'll be out there, and you could be talking. You don't even know what you're talking to anymore because the level of consciousness isn't there. Right. It's a scattered, and it's sad. They need to be institutionalized. That's compassionate. But what the left has done, they've conflated law and order and discipline with lack of compassion. So if you say that person needs to go into an institution, they'll go, how cold are you? Right. That's so insensitive. Okay, so just leave him out in the street in his own filth. That's what you're doing. Right. And it's also I get these weird little lectures when I'm outside.
Yeah. Instead, what we should do is what we've been doing, which is just have the cops arrest them until they can die in prison under some mysterious circumstances or just neglect.
I thought these guys were all about the freedom conversation, right? You want there to be a policy and mass policy, which there has been for a while, and it's been fluctuated between mayors, but that the NYPD has the ultimate discretion to decide who gets to be institutionalized and who doesn't get to be institutionalized, and the standards are going to be entirely racialized and subjective. He's fine with that because he's in his fancy suit walking up and down 6th Avenue, and he doesn't have to see that when he goes into the News Corp building. But that's not the exact precedent of state overreach that you're supposed to be so concerned about as a conservative.
And the left isn't just saying don't lock these people up. It's also saying give them housing. Yeah. And also the other essentials that are necessary for life that we, for some reason, for capitalists, commodified in this country.
I kind of forgot for a second he was talking about unhoused people there, and I thought I just kind of input his own Fox News colleagues, and I was like, he's right, but you shouldn't say it like that. I wouldn't say that Bill O'Reilly and them are living in their own trash. They're just spewing trash into the society for the rest of us, but it is incomprehensible. And so, I do applaud his willingness to admit that about their ability to interview people who are just people in the streets and not get any real feasible information back. But a while ago, I remember when they had that segment on Fox News. Was it Fox and Friends when one of them pretended to be homeless and went out on the street to collect change? And was it actually Greg Gutfeld?
It wasn't Greg Gutfeld. It was John Stossel.
Oh yeah, it was John Stossel who did that. Like he went out on the streets and like collected change from people and then used it to show how it was bad to give people change.
Yeah,
it was a very
it was
confused
entitled.
clip.
I just looked it up. Freeholders: panhandling. That's the YouTube. That's the YouTube description of that John Stossel segment where he dressed up like a homeless person and saw how much money he could get if he panhandled to make a point that. You know, it's really like it's a way to make a ton of money if you're begging for money on the street. It's a total scam.
And I just cannot believe that this, level of intellect in our reporters was unable to get, comprehensive answers about how homeless population, from their own mouths, just because, they're obviously acting in such good faith. We send people on the streets to talk to them and they just can't give us straight answers. I wonder why. They turn in next week for when we pretend to have like a blind dog to get money and like prove that no, you shouldn't give money to anybody.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we got the gist. All right, we're not gonna have enough time for any more calls today. Sorry, guys. I'm gonna read a few more IMs and get out of here. Emma's distant cousin. 1, I think the MR crew would enjoy James Lowen's takes on the whitewashing of American history, Confederate monuments, and sundown towns. If only there was an avid reader there. That's for you, Matt. 2, I'm surprised no one asked Michael, the karaoke master Tracy, if he was sent from D's nuts. Got him. Prairie Fire Kowalski. Speaking of Gutfeld and Candace, last night at the gym, a gentleman came in to the bike machine and turned it over to Fox News to watch Gutfeld's show. The TV had no sound or subtitles, but he was laughing along with the program. Just odd.
Maybe he had headphones on and had it queued up. Who knows? Bluetooth
Maybe.
or some shit. All right.
Or maybe he was a Majority Report listener who just wanted to see what the Chiron said.
Right.
Just vibing,
What's surprising is that
with
it wasn't already on TV, because usually those type of places already have Fox News blasting on all the TVs in the first place. Kumologist,
the internal battle between homeless people are faking it and homeless people are drug addicts, so they're basically insects. Never forget, speaking of young shootings, the Columbine boys were white supremacists. That often gets ignored. That's I didn't know that, actually.
Didn't they do it on Hitler's birthday? Wasn't it 420?
Oh, really?
I think so, yeah.
Blumpkin, I was a high school incel. Then I took a shower, acted nice to people, and fixed my unrealistic ideas of a sexual partner. Now I have sex, and it's awesome. Joe Snuffy, Emma should look into making a custom alarm clock people can buy to help us all wakey. Maybe, yeah. Fierce Deity, as we all know, the thing that Hitler really did wrong was giving speeches to crowds. Right. White communists. It isn't accidental that America's right-wingers constantly compare their unjustified aggrievements to the Holocaust or Hitler, or to segregation, or to lynching, or to racism. This is a deliberate tactic of fascism that I call fascist inversion, to seize a fact or phrase that specifically condemns the ugliness and moral rot of fascism and strip it of meaning by turning it against the enemies of fascism.
Yeah, I mean, it's a known factor in neo-fascism that like they just appeal to the values of like the liberal opponents that they have. It becomes even more, weird in America because like our liberals have no values.
Yeah.
So they just like start like grasping at things like, you guys hate slavery, right? What if we, getting vaccinated was like being a slave? That would be bad, right?
Yeah, exactly. Fascist inversion is deliberate destruction of meaning and morality and language. It is not ironic, silly, or jokey. It is a flashing red light that you are dealing with mobilized fascists. The responsibility of the rest of us is to recognize this tactic for what it is and remind the world what these genocidal monsters are trying to achieve.
Yeah, I don't think it's necessarily conscious, but I think it's definitely true that there's a dynamic.
Yes, for some it's conscious. I think for others it's less conscious. Right-wing salesperson, Matt Leck, you shut your dirty, sexy mouth. If you tell people about how capitalism really is, the harder it is for folks like me to get that Coke money. All right. We're just going to do a few more. Shut the cuck up. You think Kirsten Sinema is an actual sociopath, or is she getting paid by some big interests? What's the meme about why not both?
A little bit both. Yeah. I mean,
I don't think enough Americans have like the emotional strength to be sociopaths. They just like are able to insulate themselves with too many people who tell them like just enable their bad behavior.
Yeah, you can simulate socialism.
Yeah, one day you just like that just gets like bust and they start crying on the TV and you're like, okay, like can't you feel bad for me because Trump got COVID? It's like, okay, come on.
Yeah. Aaron is not cool. Speaking of mayors, Emma, did you get to the Mayor of Easttown finale? I did. Like, I like that show. I think, I don't know. I have like complex thoughts about it. I really liked it. I couldn't believe Kate Winslet is like a small town cop. I don't know. It was a little mannered for me, and it was a little, I'm a little sensitive to actors like cosplaying small town middle class and or poverty. Sometimes I just think it's a little mannered, but I love her in general. I like the show. Mike Pillow, people think that the homeless need compassion, but they don't really need that. They are feral marauders in service to Immortum Joe. If we give them homes, they just strip them down to soup up their desert roadsters and terrorize the highways with their flame guitars. So that's a Mad Max reference. Okay, and the final I am of the day. My mother was a caseworker for a housing program in Albuquerque for a decade. Their principle is that the housing and dignity must come first. Sobriety or other forms of rehab follow. It's been a pretty successful program. People are not selling their own copper plumbing. They're using a better night's sleep and a shower to face the day and put mental health services and community involvement into practice, says Pep.
Surprise, surprise. Our lack of basically providing this stuff to people is making these things like addiction that Candace Owens is so knowledgeable about worse.
Yep.
Well, we've also seen other countries that works. It's just, conservatives are allowed to appeal to like, ironically, the conservative belief that Americans are the best and worst people in the world. That no matter that whatever works for other countries can't possibly work here because we're just too in love with like freedom and also, I guess, like being bad.
Right.
Guys, Jeff from Georgia exceeded his amount.
Oh, yay, Jeff from Georgia. Look at that.
Hooray.
Oh my God. All right. You guys are amazing. Thank you so much. That's really incredible to have that happen so quickly. So thank you so much. Cheers to Jeff and cheers to all of you. What a lovely way to end the show. Brandon, Matt, and Bradley, thank you guys so much for a great show. And we will see you all tomorrow for Casual Friday. Later, folks.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth and the lie bar, but finding out won't make me feel it.